at the wrong thing. So you can hit go again. I'm sorry. Huh? No. Let's see. I'm gonna delete that one. And then let's see. Yeah, had my names all messed up. Okay. The widowed prophet. Before we get into our lesson a little bit, um, I'm all discombobulated. We got a lot of things, it seems like, is going on around, and I don't know if it's teaching, mindset, whatever. Um, Sometimes it can seem like life is just overwhelming. Sickness, trouble, heartache, bills, you name it. You name it. And for a lot of church people, their first thought is, let's blame it on the devil. The devil is after me, The devil's out to get me. And honestly, in my mind, I don't think we ought to give the devil any airtime in that sense. But you know how it is. Okay, you got sickness, you got this going on. I know, everybody's got sickness and trouble, and it's like the devil is always there. And, the old saying is there's always something. I mean, that's, how many times in your life have you had it to where it wasn't something? And I don't know, maybe you got 15 minutes in your life when it wasn't something, but for the most part, it's always something. It's always something, if you think really hard. Um, and I know, I hope I haven't run people off for changing the style of kind of do church, but really my whole goal and intention I've mentioned before is I want engaging conversation, because I think we grow the most in that um, engaging conversation. Um, I can verify that with scriptures. That's how Jesus did it, engaging conversation. And that is the goal. And the reason being is so that you can understand and I don't know what's a way to put it. Stay strong, I guess, in the face of all these things that happen and continue to happen. Um, we haven't faced it in the sense that others faced it around the world, but you remember Peter writing, and I know these are just verses on the page to most people, but he says, "Why do you think it a strange thing for this fiery trial, which is to try you?" I mean, Peter said that. Now, what was their trials that they were going through? These guys, at the time when Peter wrote that, are being persecuted. Not just persecuted, not told to shut up, but being killed in a horrible manner for the gospel. And not just a gospel of good news, but this fantastic, weird, amazing, troubling story about a man that was raised from the dead, because that was the whole thing. When they could go around and talk about all kinds of stuff, but when you start bringing up somebody resurrected, they wasn't having it. They wasn't having it. And I know it can be very trying when you have troubles and sorrows and all of those things going on in your life. I think often, of my son Stevie and Dee, and having not just one autistic kid, but they got twins. And you know what? It's not like they're going to get 6 years old and grow out of it. There you are. Your whole life course is altered. What are you going to do? They're never going to be able to take care of themselves. They're never going to have the life that what you would call normal is going to have. That changes everything. And, if that doesn't bring questions and thoughts into your mind, then I don't know what does. And then, we live in a fallen world. I mean, do we? Don't we? There's a form of things called apologetics. You guys ever heard apologetics? Apologetics. You know what that means? Honestly, that means that my religion or that my doctrine or that my teaching is always trying to take up for God. In other words, I'm apologetic. Well, it's not God's fault. We live in a fallen world. Well, it's, and there's and many teachings are apologetic. And I know that I've been there many, many times, but I want to tell you something. God doesn't need me to apologize. What he does, he does. I mean, that's just it. And, whatever. And I think a lot of times our small thinking, and that's the reason for this engaging conversation, because what do you do in the face of sickness? I know this is neither here nor there. I don't know the guy, but he used to be on TV a whole lot, named Michael J. Fox. It's probably a stage name. I don't know what his name is. And I think he played in, was it Family Ties or something, and then all the Back to the Futures and some other movies and all that. And he's got Parkinson's disease, and it's progressively gotten worse. Yeah, he got it when he was in his 30s. And, it has just changed his life. Now, he deals with it from a money perspective. What I mean, he's got more money than the common person would, so he can probably get better care, but neither here nor there. I don't think God's punished him or any of that stuff. Boom, he just got it. And he was talking the other day, did an interview that he hoped he had a peaceful death. Now, what is it in a person's life that would make them long for a peaceful death? I mean, honestly, now, is this a bad thing, or is it? And honestly, I think that was a great aspiration, because I see that with Jacob. He blessed his children, put his feet up in his bed, and died. And, all of these kind of things. Papa that stayed in the bed for 26 years or whatever. How does a person deal with that? But then you come to the church, and it's almost like we can become Job's miserable comforters, and to think, well, my God, you must have some kind of sin in your life. You know what I mean? You must have some kind of sin in your life for this to happen, because, we got to be on the apologetic side of blaming God or whatever. And, go back to those verses in Isaiah. Isaiah 40, I think. It's on a lot of people's Bible cases, about run and not be weary. And, you don't know about being weary until you've been weary, until you're at your wit's end. And Do you know what every one of us always want when we're at our wits' end? We want out. But if I could tell people this, you are at a place to discover the Lord in a ways that you have never encountered him before, that only this circumstance can provide. It is a great opportunity. This ain't part of the lesson, but think about those disciples bailing water all night long. Bailing water. And they got pretty frustrated and woke the Lord up. I mean, and I'm throwing that out there because I don't know how you take that, but have you ever woke the Lord up, so to speak, at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, what are you doing? Are you asleep? Are you on a long journey? What is going on? I'm at my wits' end here. And then have the Lord answer you back, not in a way that you suspected, like, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention, but have him come right back at you and say, where's your faith? I mean, that's kind of one of these kind of conversations, ain't it? It wasn't like, oh, come here, Mark, put your head right here. Matthew, it's okay. Sit on my lap. I'll bounce you. No, it's like, where's your faith? What's going on with you? But how many times do we get in that situation and it's like, man, I'm weary, I'm tired, I'm done for. I don't know what I don't know, all of those situations. So one of the things I wanted to bring about in this dialogue so that we could talk about it, and for one, find out, hey, you're not the first one that's ever went through this. You're not going to be the last. And these situations are moments, opportunities to discover the Lord in fresh and new ways. And maybe, we might see a little bit more next week on our lesson, but, just thinking about, because we have this mindset, we're more than conquerors. Now, what does that mean, more than conquerors? What does it mean? I can do all things through Christ. People puts it on a T-shirt. It's probably the second most famous scripture in history, next to John 3:16. I can do all things through Christ. What does that mean? I mean, what does that mean when your two daughters are autistic? What does it mean? I mean, what does it mean when your child is born with Down syndrome? I mean, you understand here. And in our minds, we're thinking, hey, let's pray through, let's do this. And then at the end of the day, we still got two daughters with autism. The reality of it. And it's tough. It's tough. So one of the things, we're going to look at some scriptures today that you're very familiar with. And I promise you, you've never heard it in this light before. But we're going to look at it in a brand new light. And this is one of the things that when you read text, I want you to read them slower and be drawn into the story. Notice little details of the story. And in a lot of these stories, there's many characters in the story, and for one, you might be one of every character in the story, or you might be a bystander that's watching the story take place. You don't know. But here's this story. I'm calling this the widowed prophet. And just by that title, the widowed prophet, where do you think I'm going to be reading from? Anybody guess? The widowed prophet. No guesses? You're still back at the children? The widowed prophet. Okay. I'm going to be in Mark's gospel. And try to just answer one at a time so that we're not talking over everybody. Mark's gospel, chapter 12. We're going to start with verse 38. And in his teaching, he was saying, beware the scribes who like to walk around in long robes, and like personal greetings in the marketplaces, seats of honor in the synagogues and places of honor at banquets, who devour widows' houses and for appearance sake offer long prayers. These will receive all the more condemnation. And Jesus sat down opposite the treasury and began watching how the people were putting money into the treasury. Many rich people were putting in large amounts. And a poor widow came and put in 2 leptocoins, or 2 mites, maybe in your King James, which amount to quadrans. I don't know what your Bible says. Farthings. She gave her 2 cents. She had 2 cents. Calling his disciples to him, he said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all the contributors, say it right, to the treasury. Excuse me, for they all put in out of their surplus, but she out of her poverty put in all she owned, all she had to live on. Now, has anybody heard this story before? Many times. Yeah, many times. This is a classical or a classic gospel story. And it's probably more readily preached in the springtime. You know why? Huh? Well, yeah, but it's a money drive. It's a money drive. You guys ever heard it for a money drive? I mean, if this woman could put in her last 2 cents, surely you can give more. I mean, you can give. But, I mean, let me ask you this. In what ways have you heard this story? If she gave, then you should give more. Yeah. Like she gave her, we should be given more, right? Yeah. Anybody else? Y'all kind of heard it in that same way? Basically. I mean, and it's almost like, well, maybe Jesus threw the story in there just so we could start giving more money. I mean, if this woman gave all she had and we all got extra money, we could give extra money. And then at the same time, have you ever read the story, and squirmed a little bit? Like, wow, maybe I'm not giving enough. I mean, if this desperately poor widow can give all she had, how much more should we give? Or maybe am I living too comfortable? Maybe I've got some more than I could give. Huh?
It's also a story of faith. I mean, you have to have faith to give everything. Exactly. She knew she was.
And have you ever thought in your mind that you wasn't giving enough? And when I say this, when I say giving enough, take it out of the money realm. I mean, how many feel like you read enough, or you pray enough, or you do whatever enough? And then you could look at this woman and say, well, my gosh, she gave all. You know, so kind of makes you squirm a little bit. And I have. I mean, because this woman's brief appearance in the scripture, it's kind of right there. It's kind of in your face. It's kind of haunting. It's kind of sharp. It's kind of troubling. And then at the same time, something in me doesn't want her reduced to some moral or to be immoral or exploited for the sake of raising money. Do you think Jesus was exploiting this woman to be used in the church for the next 2,000 years to make you feel guilty because you're not giving enough? I've heard that a whole lot, though. I've heard it a whole lot. Well, this woman, she gave her last two, and you should give more because we got a program we're wanting to fund or a new building project or whatever.
I don't think it was about her either. I think it was about the ones he was actually talking to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they could, stand there and think the same thing. Oh, he just wants us to give more. That's not what it was about either. I think
Uh-huh.
he was just saying he wants all of everything, not money per se.
Yeah. Well, you guys understand the scene, the way the temple and stuff was set up. They had these big old pots out there. And as people come in, they would donate. Okay, so if I'm dumping a bunch of change, you're going to hear a whole, because they didn't have paper money back then. So you're dumping in. So you could hear my ching ching, then hear Joe's pouring the money out, and I don't know who that was, but that was the sound of somebody that was very rich. Yeah. So, and then let me ask you a question. When you read these Bible verses here, this story, what's this woman's name? Does anybody know what her name is? You ever wonder why the Bible doesn't tell us what her name is? Well, I mean, that's a good point. Maybe it wasn't important. Maybe it was. What you got, Denise?
I was just going to say maybe so that we can all identify.
I think that's a great point right there, Denise. Yeah, because sometimes the names are given, sometimes they're not, so that we can all identify. But let me ask you a question. Do you ever wonder what her name is? Do you ever wonder why the Lord didn't tell us her name? I mean, I got questions, Kathy. I'm just not satisfied. I want to know who this woman is because I know who Mother Teresa is. I got her name and I know, and when I hear the name Mother Teresa, something comes over me. Like a lot of Christians, if you hear the word Billy Graham, something will come over you of all, and I hear Mother Teresa, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what an example in our generation of humility.
But we don't have a name for her. But when you start with the story, people go, the widow's mite. So that's what they connect to.
Yeah, I mean, a whole story about the widow's mite, but we don't even know her name. And I wonder sometimes, do you remember the woman who brought in the alabaster box? What was her name?
Some say Mary, and some say she's not named.
Yeah. But at least you could argue either way. It's Mary, it's not Mary. But at least we got something. This woman doesn't get a name, and I'm wondering why, Lord, don't you? I mean, do you ever read these stories and stop and think, Lord, I mean, let me ask you this. Do you believe this is a real story? Not just a metaphor. I believe it's a real story. So I believe there's some woman who just had 2 pennies, and she loved the temple. She loved being a Jew, and she gave all that she had into the Jewish treasury. And we don't even know her name. We don't even know her name. Now, you remember me talking about Michael J. Fox and him wishing or hoping that he could die in peace. I wish I knew that this lady died in peace. We don't know. But and I know you're thinking, well, she didn't die. Does anybody think she died? She did die. I mean, not like 40 years down the road, but I mean like within the next few days. You don't think she died? These are good points, that I'm raising up. But this is how I want you to come into the story. Okay, I'm going to tell you she died. I'm going to tell you that she died, and you're thinking, well, how do I know that she died? Let's look at these words here. She probably died just a few days later. Verse 44, for they all put in out of their surplus, but she out of her poverty put in all she owned, all she had to live on. That word live on there is this word bios. In other words, she sacrifices her whole life. Now imagine we just read the story, but imagine. Remember, there's a story in the Old Testament. There's a woman, and she says, guys, we're going to make a cake. We're going to eat a cake and die. Now, why was she going to make a cake and die? Because she didn't have nothing else. Now, this woman, what did she have? She had enough money for one meal. And what did she do with that? She gave it away.
But do you really think she died?
Yes.
Okay, who's telling the story?
Jesus.
Jesus is telling the story.
Uh-huh.
Why wouldn't he bless her?
Man, these are good points. See, these are good points here.
Who's telling the story? You said Jesus.
Uh-huh.
There's no way that.
Hey, these are good points. And again, when we read a story, I want to come into the story because I'm making the argument that she died. And you're saying, why wouldn't Jesus go bless her? I would say this, why didn't Jesus heal everybody at the pool of Bethesda? I mean, I got some questions for Jesus. I really do, because how many did he walk over, Denise? There was many. Did it say not? There was many. And he walks over them all and heals one guy. This is the Son of God here. Joe, I don't understand why he did that, because I know what I would have done. I'd have healed everybody, wouldn't you? I'd have started the ministry off with healing everybody, but he walked over them. And how many of them people was probably upset to watch the dude who had been there for 38 years get up and go home, and the rest of them was waiting on the moving of the water. So I know what you're thinking here. Well, Jesus had to bless her and somebody had to go feed her and all of this. But I'm telling you, at this point in the story, at this juncture, this woman takes her last money to go buy a Big Mac at McDonald's. She's got nothing at home. She's got nothing. She's a widow. She has no husband. She doesn't have any kids to lean on. And she takes her last meal and gives it away. Yeah, I do. And the reason I say that, because there are people who get in the place where I've got nothing else. I'm ready. And you think, well, that's not crazy. Paul said, bring me my coat. I've run a good race. I'm ready to go. They were going to cut his head off. He was a young man. Right? He says, I'm ready. Here. So I gotta, in my mind, I'm thinking this widow has said, we don't know. Did her husband die? Was he killed in war? We don't have no idea. We don't even have her name, so we could just check out her genealogy and get a little. We don't have nothing. All we know is this woman said, I'm done. We don't know nothing. We don't know nothing. She could have been a young widow. She could have been an old woman. We don't know, but all we know is she resigned herself to give up. Do y'all, here's a question I will ask you. Do y'all think she was going up there to give her last meal money away, thinking somebody was going to take care of her?
I think she had faith Jesus would take care of her.
I would say this. I would say she probably didn't know much even who Jesus was, because why wasn't she over there listening to Jesus' teaching? You got to understand, we're getting close to Passover. There are hundreds of thousands of people coming to Jerusalem. Now, Jesus is over here teaching, and I know we get TV stuff that, now there was times when he fed the 5,000, And there was times when he preached on the streets, and there was times when he went into the synagogues, and there was times when they was just a handful gathered out. Now he's doing some teaching here, but did the widow come to him? Yeah. Well, I don't know on that if this was the last time she ever did it. But I'll say this, it was the last time. Because she didn't have nothing else to give. And you know what, guys? I don't know, but I'm hoping even in this 20 minutes so far that you've had more conversation in this story and thoughts about this story than ever before than just trying to raise money. And I'm foolish enough to believe this last verse, that if Jesus says this woman gave all she owned, all she had to live on, I'm foolish enough to believe Jesus is telling the truth that this woman had nothing left. I don't believe she had a house to sell, a car to sell, rings to pawn. I believe all she had left was the clothes on her back and 2 pennies. And yeah, she gave all that she had. Her last. Now, when you do that, what are you thinking? I guess this is the point I got to make. When you get to that juncture, what are your thoughts? Now, Tracy says, well, she's going to be living on faith or whatever. But remember, we're not in 2025 society. We're in old Palestine. Right? We're in old Palestine. How much weight did a widow have in those days? Nothing. She wasn't worth as much as a child. Nothing. I mean, honestly, an old widow. Well, I mean, this is why Jesus would say, go visit the fatherless and the widows. Because in their mind, at least a child can grow up, and if it's a female, she can grow up and hopefully have sons. Or if you have a son, he can grow up. But a widow, probably the lowest class of people on the face of the earth at this time. Now she's got enough for one meal, and she gives it away. So what's her thinking? I mean, honestly, just pretend you're this woman. You've got enough for a $4 Happy Meal or whatever at McDonald's. That's all you got. You don't have a job. You don't have nothing. This is all you got. Nobody's going to give you anything ever again. What you're thinking? You're going to a different store? Yeah. I mean, this is my opinion. You guys are maybe seeing it different. And like I said, I'm challenging you on this because we have the hindsight of 2020. But I'm trying to bring you into the story to tell you this woman had given up. She's got nothing else. She's not going down to the welfare office. She's not going to go sign up on her pension. It says, Jesus says she gave up everything she had to live on. To the temple. No, she didn't give it to him. She gave it to the temple treasury.
But who do they think is in the temple?
See, this wasn't for Jesus. This was part of their upbringing. Like I said, they had the pot set out there, and they were told to give. And who was getting it? The Levites were getting it, right? It was going to Levites and to the building. It was not one penny was going to Jesus. She didn't have in her mind at all that she was giving it to Jesus. Nothing whatsoever about Jesus. Jesus is a bystander standing over here watching. I think that's exactly right. Lottie, that's exactly the way I feel. I think this woman didn't want to live anymore. She didn't have nothing else, and she gave it all and said, I'm just going to go lay down and die. And you think, well, no Christians in the Bible is going to do that. Well, let me ask you about Elijah. What did Elijah do? Elijah said, I'm just going to go eat this cake and die. What did Job think? Did Job think, man, I love being a Christian? I mean, I'm just asking these. So we've got many instances in Scripture where people had resigned and just says, you know what, I've had enough. I've had enough. And this widow woman, I think she says, I've had enough. I'm not going to go wine and dine on my last 2 cents. Here, you guys can have it. I'm done. I'm done. She's giving it up. Now, that may be contrary to the way you guys see it, and that's okay. But I want you to remember, she's a widow in first century Palestine.
I read something.
Yeah.
Said this is in Timothy, 1 Timothy, the 5th chapter. Said, honor widows that are widows indeed. But if any widow have children or nephews, let them learn first to show pity at home, and to requite their parents, for that is good and acceptable before God. Now she that is a widow indeed and desperate, trusteth in God, and continueth in supplications and prayers night and day.
Desperate. It used that word desperate, I think it is. But you got to remember, when is Timothy written? After resurrection. This is before. And this woman has been living on the margins of society, on the edges. You know what the edges are? It means you're half a step away from dropping off. And if you drop off and you're a widow in first century Palestine, does anybody care? Nobody cares. Don't matter. I mean,
I equate what we're talking about right now to the Gaza Strip of today.
to the what?
The Gaza Strip.
Amen, Tim. Amen.
There's probably a million people who are starving today.
Mm-hmm.
We're the richest country in the world. We run everything. We got a king, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And how many people in this room is even
Uh-huh.
about giving stuff to those people over there?
Yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought about it.
Well, I've thought about it a lot, Tim. The problem that we have is knowing that your donation or money or food would actually be given to the person that you intended. I think there's a lot of people around, Tim, that would, if I knew that my money was getting to you, Tim, you desperately needed it, but how do you know? And there's so much.
But at the same time, you got people here, and if you give them money to go buy food, you don't know if they want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll do it just by food.
Yeah.
I mean, your food. I mean, that we can say all kinds of things, but truthfully, I do believe that where there's a will, there's a way. And if you, and I don't just mean that real, like, playful. I mean, if your will is to do something for somebody,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking about the lady
Right.
we're talking about
exactly.
versus those people over
Yep.
there. When you're sitting there and you're a mother and father, you have nothing. If you ever watch TV and see these people, they have nothing.
Yeah.
You're sitting there and you got 2 kids, just like Stephen or whatever. And you know, if anybody in here and your children, you'll give them the last bite.
Absolutely.
And then you know
Absolutely.
we ain't got it.
Well, I mean, that's how I want us to see this widow, Tim. She's got nothing. She had her 2 cents. She could have bought her a last meal. She's living on the edge of society, and worse than that, nobody cares. She's got no pension, no Social Security. She can't go to the bank and get a loan. She's got no husband. She's got no children. She's got nothing because Jesus says she gave all she had to live on, which means this woman is not going to go home and starve to death. She didn't have nothing. She's got nothing. Zero. Nobody to draw from. And she's got no social status. Right? She can't go and say, well, my husband was the governor or my husband was this, so therefore she's got no social status. And, you know, people hide behind social status. She's got none. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, this woman is impoverished, and here's the word that the Lord gave me a few weeks ago that we're going to be on for a little while, because we're looking at things different. She's impoverished and she's vulnerable in every way. Vulnerable. That's a hard place for us to be. It seems like this is upside down of what we think gospel and Christianity should be. Denise, we shouldn't be vulnerable at all. We're supposed to be more than conquerors. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. I got to ask you some questions. Are there any weapons that have ever formed against you that seems like they're prospering? I mean, we can lie to ourselves and say, no, man, everything's going good, but then really in the darkness of our minds, we're thinking, I don't know, it's not looking too good.
In the darkness of your mind, you think about people that have done something to you and they're prospering. That's when you realize just what you're saying.
Yeah.
It may come in a different form, but you
Yeah.
have that thing where it's like, wait a minute, this is not supposed to be.
Uh-huh.
But then again, I always turn around and say, what makes you different? Not a different nothing.
Yeah. Well, see, I want us to be more like Nathaniel. You remember what he said about Nathaniel? Well, there's no guile in Nathaniel's mouth because Nathaniel had enough guts to say, is any good thing ever come out of Nazareth? You telling me this is Messiah over here? I'm telling you, ain't nothing good to come out of Nazareth. But you know, where we can be honest because, you know, we read the Psalms, but honestly, how many Psalms do people really read? I'm going to tell you, the only one I know is Psalm 23. Because I don't know how many Psalms people have really in their heart and in their soul, burning in them when you're just crying out, how long, oh Lord? You see what the enemy's doing to me, and they're prospering. What's going on here? You know, that's just eating you up, and you're just, daggone, you know, what is... you know, Psalms are just something over here, and it's Psalm 23, and it's laid down in green pastures, and it's still waters, and it's all gravy. But then I look at people's lives, and I'm thinking the gravy is spilled all in the floor. You know what I mean? And nothing. But as Christians, we gotta fake it till you make it, and can't be real and have T-shirts. Well, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Not all of Psalms is all good either. Because when you start reading, there is some groaning coming out of it.
Oh my God.
I mean, there's like desperation. I'm actually reading that out.
Yeah.
There is so much desperation coming out. If you take more than one psalm, you cannot feed on that.
Uh-huh.
More than that, because you're going to run it all together and you're never going to realize what the one said. You can't do that. You have to, like, I call it, chew on that one.
Well, I guess my point is this, you know, we are so far removed from living scripturally. And when I say living scripturally, to where if you was to go back to a Hebrew, and no matter what circumstances was going on, they would say, oh my God, Denise, I'm living Psalm 54 right now. And everybody would just know. Or my God, I feel like I'm over here with Jezebel, or I'm over here with Moses, or I'm over here with Jehu. And they would put every circumstance into Scripture. I mean, you understand what I mean? We're so far removed, but they had something to lean on. They could go through Psalm 54 and lean and hear this and then see the hope at the end. And we don't do that because we're not versed. We don't even know how to go into scriptures, talk about them, argue them, debate them, any of that thing. So we're just so far removed, sitting over here with a tattoo, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Well, understand when Paul said that, the guy's been bitten on the hand by a snake. He's let down in the basket. He's been shipwrecked. He's been beat 3 times, left for dead. We forget all of them things. We forget that right before that he says, I know how to be starving and at the same time feel like I am full. He didn't say, guys, guess what? It's all gravy. All I got to do is pray and the Lord sends me down food right out of the sky. He said, I'm as satisfied when I'm starving as I am when I'm eating at the Ritz Hilton. And see, we as Christians we haven't learned how to do that. See, Jesus could do that because he could sleep in the boat when the storm was going on, versus trying to fight the storm, okay? And I'm, some people say, well, let me say it this way. Jesus followed his Father, and when there was times to fight, he fought. What do you mean? He would take a whip of cords, Joe, and run everybody out of the temple. He would cast out demons, and he would stand toe-to-toe with the Pharisees. But then there was times when he shrunk away, when he slept in the back of the boat, when you would seem like he would be calm in the storm, right? So there was a knowing when there was a time to fight, knowing when there was a time to sleep, knowing when there was a time, and see, if you know all of those things, then you can rest, or you can get up and go, or you can, but we live in the dadgone dark, and we don't know nothing, and it's just stress and more. And let me get back into the story. If my timing is right, there's 4 days left before Jesus dies on the cross when he sees this. So this would be, what, a Tuesday? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? No, this will be a Monday. This would be a Monday. So he's got 4 days he's going to be dying on the cross, knowing the timeline. So again, this is why I'm troubled with this story here. Because what does it mean to applaud a destitute woman who gives her last 2 cents to the temple's treasury before slipping away to starve? I mean, what is there to applaud about this woman? And I know you're thinking, well, now, wait a minute, you're just all wanting to celebrate this woman. You forgot the first verses I read, didn't you? I mean, is this really a story of selfishness? Is it a cautionary story about being naive? Was this woman being naive? She wasn't being naive. Let's go back and read what Jesus just said. Beware of scribes who walk around in long robes like personal greetings in marketplaces, seats of honor in the synagogues, places of honor at banquets, who devour widows' houses. Jesus is warning them about the people who devour widows' houses. And what's this woman doing? She's given to the ones, willingly to the one who is devouring her. Because what should the scribes and the Pharisees and the temple treasury been doing? Exactly. But this woman knew they wasn't going to take care of her. She wasn't going there saying, oh, man, I'm giving this, and you know what, they're going to have a dinner tomorrow evening, and we're going to have a meal, and they're going to... No, she gave all she had, knowing the very system she's given money to is devouring her. Had y'all ever thought about it that way? Now imagine that. This is the same kind of mindset of them telling you that if you keep eating Reese cups and you got diabetes, it's going to kill you, and I'm just keep eating Reese cups. You would have to think, duh, Joe, stop eating Reese cups. It's killing you, right? But this woman is giving to the very system that was given by God to take care of her, but is so corrupt now that she is a widow who we don't even know her name, living on the margins of society, and when she goes off to die, they'll find her body in the street and nobody even cares. See, that part of the story is never told. It's just if this woman can give, Joe, then you should give more because we want to build a gymnasium, right? We want our church to look really, really pretty. We want our church to look better than your church. So I need all of your money, Tim. I need it all. If we can get the signs right and the steeples right, then we can have it all. And if you think, well, I'm embellishing here, wait, we ain't done with the story. Should we cheer this woman? Should we weep for this woman? Or should we complicate the story even more? I'm hoping I've complicated the story for you a little bit because I meant to. I want you to see it different. I want you to battle with it, struggle with it, ponder with it, think about it. Think about maybe what's the woman's name? Jesus, why did you keep it secret from us? Why couldn't you tell her her name is Elizabeth? Why couldn't you tell us her name is Mary or Martha or Judas or whatever? You couldn't tell us. It's just a woman. Because he wants us to know what society and what religion, Tim, exactly what you said, thought about this woman, thought about the people in Gaza. Nothing. Nothing. I don't know. Let's wait and see. Is it teaching y'all a lesson? Huh?
Because in the story it's like, okay, she died.
Now what?
They didn't care. Jesus, and it almost like, well, did he care? Because he didn't save her either.
Actually, he put the scripture there though for a reason.
Right.
So he had a purpose. And
No, I agree with that. But for that time, was there a purpose for that time? For those that was involved in that?
Well, again, you remember Jesus starts off this whole thing about telling us about these scribes devouring widows' houses. And what do? They like the pomp and the circumstance. They like the greetings in the marketplace. I'm a daggone preacher and I got a Cadillac and, all of this other stuff. And what Jesus is telling them, their whole religion is a sham. Because what true and undefiled religion is, visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction and keep unspotted from the world, they've missed the whole point. And I got to ask this, has the church changed any?
started to say, who does that now?
How many has actually thought about that?
Because they don't. But he prefaces this whole story with saying, look, their whole mindset is a sham. Their whole ideal is a sham. They are looking. Not only are they not taking care of the widows. He didn't say they forgot them. He said they are actively engaged in devouring. Think about that. He didn't just say, well, they forgot about the widows. No, he said they are actively engaged in devouring them. Eating them alive. And you know what? This woman, I don't know if she understood it, if she loved her heritage so much. We don't know. This is what I'm saying. I'd like to ask her. Wouldn't you like to run to this woman, Joe, and shake her and say, what are you doing? Stop giving money to these people.
Or do you shake the ones that she's given?
Maybe that, but yeah. Jesus is just, in the days leading up, like I said, he's got 4 days left. And he just keeps giving one scathing critique after another around the economic, political exploitation that he witnessed all around him. I mean, he sees this stuff going on. I got to go back. Here's what I think. I mean, if Jesus showed up in our churches today, is he going to be happy with what we're doing? And I know people do it like this way. I heard a guy say this other day, hey, man, you don't want to be caught watching football on a Wednesday night. Well, they don't have it on Wednesday anyway, but, because if Jesus showed up and you're watching football, or Sunday night football, Joe, if you're not in church on Sunday night and you're watching football, do you really think that that's God's concern? If I read the whole Bible, he doesn't mention Monday night football or Sunday night football in the Bible. He mentions taking care of the widows and the poor, and is there justice and is there righteousness? Is people being treated right? And if they're not, who's speaking out? Who's doing something against it? Justice, love, giving. That's what this whole thing about it. And when I look at the church, I think, what in the world are we doing? Trying to get people in so we can get more money, so we can build a bigger building. Remember what Jesus told about the one guy? Well, I'll just build bigger barns. Man, I got a whole lot. I'll just build a bigger barn. I mean, how did that story end, Joe? I mean, so here again, let's keep all this in mind. And, Jesus, he makes a mockery of Roman pomp and circumstance. You remember how Jesus rides into Jerusalem? You would have thought that the Son of God would have came in. How does he ride in the book of Revelation? On a white horse, my God, you would have thought he would have the golden bridle, and, you would have thought he would have pranced in. Because how did Pilate ride into Jerusalem? Oh, yeah, he rides in with his chariots and his war horses, right? So Jesus comes in peace, and what's he doing? He's mocking. This is a mockery of things, Jesus says, look, these stones, they can cry out my praise. Come on, guys, what are you doing? Look at the pomp of the Romans and look at Jesus riding in on a donkey. How does he handle his own people in the Jewish temple who were there devouring widows' houses? Because what are they doing? They are selling. Because you remember, if you go to Jerusalem, you can't come empty-handed. You got to have a sacrifice, and depending on how much money you got, and what could you buy, or is not a sparrow sold for 2 farthings? So, and when a child was born, if the more money you had, the more offering you had to give to God. Do you remember what offering Mary and Joseph gave? Yeah. 2 turtle doves. Why did they give 2 turtle doves? Because they were poor. They didn't have no money. But you had to have something, so you go down there to the temple to try to buy it, and you got to wheel and deal to even buy the sacrifice that God, you understand here, exploitation was going on, and what was the bottom line? It would come down to all about money. Amazing, isn't it? The love of money, the root of all evil. Huh? Yeah. Jesus refuses to answer the scribes and the Pharisees when they demand to know the source of his authority. You remember they challenged him? He says, will you tell me? He confounds religious leaders on taxes. Remember? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar. He indicts them with a hard parable about a vineyard and a murdered son. Imagine hearing that parable. What should we do? Imagine you're hearing that parable and then he's just accused you of murdering the owner of the vineyard son. How are you going to feel about Jesus? He needed to read that book. What's it? Making Friends and doing, There's a book out there, influencing people. Jesus needed to read that book, Joe, because he wasn't very good at it. He defeats them on the question of the resurrection, bewilders them with riddles about him being the son of David. So why on earth would he turn around and praise a woman for endangering her already tenuous life to support an institution that he considers corrupt? Because Jesus considers the whole institution corrupt, yet the church preaches today how great this woman was for giving to a corrupt institution. We got to question it.
Was it the law or was it a voluntary?
Well, again, for one, I want to hold this up in the fact of how this sermon is always used to make you squirm about you need to give more, when Jesus has just berated the whole system for being corrupt, and this woman is giving to the corrupt, and not only giving, she's given her last meal money, and she's going to go off, according to Jesus, and starve to death. That's what she's going to do.
Not to give in to that system anymore.
Yeah.
But is that a voluntary system or did people choose to do that? I know that the government.
Well, I would say this: if I don't think God is asking you to give him your last money for a meal, I don't think he ever did. I mean, we could argue some points in Scripture, like the woman that, because I always wondered about Elijah, and you know, when he says, give me the cake to eat, and I'm thinking, I'm knocking you upside the head, buddy. Me and my boys going to eat this cake, and then we're, you know, whatever happens, happens. I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't have gave Elijah the cake. Now, maybe y'all got more faith than me, but I'm just being honest. I'm putting myself in a situation. It's me and Zach. We got one meal. This is it. And some old crusty dude shows up at my house. I don't know who he is and says, give me the cake. I'm not doing it. Because I'm honest when I read the Scriptures. I'm not going to jump in there and say, oh, my God, I would have gave him all. I wouldn't have gave Captain Caveman my cake. I'm not going to do it. I think we got to be honest, Lottie, when we read the story, and just don't read the story and say, what are you going to do, Denise? Tim is gone. You got nothing. You're living on the street. You got $3. Are you going to come to Rhythms of Grace and give it and go out there and die in the woods? I'm thinking, no. I'm going to get me something to eat, and I'm going to start begging. I'm going to do something. I'm not doing that. But is Jesus asking us to praise a woman for giving to a system he calls corrupt? I don't think he is. I don't think he is. And let me ask you this. Does Jesus commend the widow? Jesus never commends the widow. He doesn't. Does he applaud her self-sacrifice? He doesn't applaud her self-sacrifice, does he?
No, he just said that she gave more than everybody else, even though the money was less.
I mean, that's a factual statement.
Exactly.
It wasn't applauding her, commending her.
Right.
Does Jesus invite us to follow in her steps? I mean, from this text, I'm just asking, these are the questions, guys, that because the way it's presented to the church, it's like, well, Jesus wants us to give our last 2 pennies. And you know what everybody in the church ought to do? Bring 2 pennies and give. And say, I'm giving exactly what that woman gave. Here you go, preacher. You can have the 2 pennies. Knock yourself out. Go by. No, what Jesus tells us to do is notice her. I mean, honestly, in the story, he tells us to notice her. And he tells his disciples, now who are his disciples? Not in name, but, I mean, if we're taking this story literally, and we're taking the story metaphorically for you and me, who are Jesus' disciples today? Well, yes, but those who follow him, because a disciple is one who's followed him. So Jesus is telling you and me today, Jesus is sitting here, he's teaching the story, not me, and he's saying, look, I want you to notice this woman. That's what he's telling us. Notice this woman. Notice her. I mean, I'll read it again. Calling his disciples. So we got to get this picture, Denise. He's calling his disciples. He's saying, come here. Truly I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all the contributors to the treasury, for they put in all their surplus. But she, out of her poverty, put in all she owned, all she had to live on. Jesus is telling us. Now, remember what he just said a minute ago. They devour widows' houses. They like the pomp and the circumstances. They like that. But I'm telling you, come here. Notice this woman. And here's something that we don't get when we read scriptures. We don't get the tone of Jesus' voice or the look on his face. Do you ever pretend, or do you ever wonder what was his tone of voice? Was he nervously excited? Was he sad? I mean, we don't know. We don't know.
I have a picture of him in my mind where he shows no emotion on his face.
I mean, was he heartbroken? I'm going to say, I mean, was he heartbroken? I mean, of all the things that's going on, what does Jesus notice? He notices her. And what is she doing? She's not just giving. She's given to these that are devouring her.
Giving into the system.
You know, we mentioned this again. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I think everybody knows the story with Dory and how she had the surgery. They took out the wrong colon. Let me ask you guys a question. Would y'all go back to the same doctor? What if the doctor came and says, Denise, I'm sorry. Tim, I'm sorry. I messed up, took out part of your colon. That was good. Give me another shot. Would y'all? All of y'all are saying, heck no, I'm not going back to that doctor.
They're going to be coming back.
But now this woman in a sense is saying, okay, try again. And it's kind of crazy, isn't it? Because we're like, wake up, woman. Don't do this. I mean, so is Jesus outraged as he tells his disciple to peel their eyes away from the rich folks? Because he's just warned them, beware the scribes. So if he's telling his disciples, beware the scribes and the Pharisees, what are they doing? They're gawking at him. Oh, my God, look how they dress. Look at the car they drive. I mean, man, they got cattle. I mean, I don't want to be one of these preachers. Look how they live. My God, you know, they got $30,000 peacocks in their white rooms. And, I mean, look at all. Oh, my God. And Jesus is like, eyes, please. Look back over here. Pay attention. Let me tell you what they're really doing. They're devouring widows' houses. They don't care about these people. Is Jesus outraged? Is he ticked off when he thinks about this woman? What's going on, the whole scene? Is he resigned? What can I do? I mean, these people just don't get it. They just don't get it.
Not the only one. It's just that particular one that day.
Yeah.
They saw the difference. Because, again, it has to be a whole system.
Let me ask you this. Does Jesus tell one of his disciples to run after her and give her some money? Does he say, hey, Joe, here's the, Judas, you got the money. Here, go give all the money over there and take it and go give it to that woman. He doesn't do any of that. I mean, that's kind of crazy, isn't it? And what does it mean to Jesus? Just mere seconds after he's described the temple leaders as devourers of the widow's houses, to witness such a woman, a widow, being devoured, and worse, participating in her own devouring? She's given to it. How in the world would that make you feel? And immediately after the widow leaves the temple, Jesus leaves the temple. So they're in the temple. They're in this whole complex, right? And Jesus sees the woman does that, and immediately he leaves the temple. Because the woman, she gives her money, she leaves the temple, that's how it was. And now Jesus leaves the temple. And as soon as he leaves the temple, imagine he's got his disciple and he's saying, look at this woman. And all disciple, let me just read it. Chapter 13. Remember, there was no chapter breaks. So this woman, Jesus has just said she's put in all she had to live on. And he's turned around to his disciples, and they're following him, and they're walking out of the temple. And one of the disciples says, "Teacher, look. My God, look at the size of this church. Look at the wonderful stones. Look at the wonderful buildings. I mean, look at the magnificent structure of this temple." Now, what has Jesus just told them to look at? The woman. But who cares about a widow woman? Who cares, Tim, about the Palestinians? Who cares? Look at our church. Oh, my God. Look at the wonderful buildings. Look at the stones. Look how many people we got on Sunday. Look at the Cadillacs and the cars showing up in the parking lot. And what does Jesus say? I don't even have to read it. Not one stone will be left unturned. Do you think he still got the woman on his mind? I would say he probably does. And he's trying to get the disciples' minds off of the rich and the pomp and all of that. And where are they? They go from the gaze of the scribes and the Pharisees and their long robes and their long prayers to what? The magnificence of the gold and the silver and the big stones and the temple. And what do they do with the woman that Jesus is telling them to look at? They forgot about her. They forgot about her. I mean, now is the story starting to make a little bit of sense here? And then for us, have we forgot about her? Where are our eyes? I mean, where are our eyes? I mean, that's kind of an ouch, isn't it? Not one stone. Now, I can just see Jesus getting a little bit outraged. Maybe I see a tone, for me, I see him in kind of a teaching tone and a yearning, like I'm trying to get you guys to look. Look at this woman. Look at her. Watch her. Look. But when they start looking at the buildings, I think he's getting a little frustrated. And I think he comes with a little more sternness, like, guys, I'm telling you, they won't one stone be left unturned to this building. Not one. Why is that? Because the whole system was corrupt. The whole system. A system that refused to protect the poor. I mean, is Jesus telling them that no edifice steeped in systemic injustice will stand? I believe he is. I believe he is. I believe that still goes on today. No edifice steeped in systemic injustice will stand. Now, I want to go back to an earlier question. Should we cheer or should we weep in the face of this story? Maybe there's a third alternative. Should we call out as Jesus does, not calling out Jesus, but calling out as Jesus does any form of religion that manipulates the vulnerable into self-harm or destruction? Because that's what they were doing. This woman had become so manipulated by the system, she's given everything she had. Now, how many do that today. I have seen people pass a plate 5 times. I heard about a church down in Raven one time. The guest preacher they had wouldn't leave till they had taken up $10,000 for him in one setting. I tell you, he'd be at this church a long time. Because we'd be putting in our 2 cents. I tell you what. Yeah. Well, I mean, see, this is what I'm talking about. This is how manipulated people are, because they will go and give to a system that doesn't help them, that takes from them. Except for the 150 that just got shot for coming out to get the food. And the ones that are still starving. Yeah, because they're still shooting them. Of course, they've cut it down. They're not killing thousands a day. They're only killing about 150, 200 a day. But we call it peace.
Church might be better off paying $10,000 to leave.
Yeah, they probably would. After that plate come about second or third, I believe I'm taking mine back out. But anyway, any form of piety that privileges long-winded prayers over works of compassion and liberation, any version of Christianity that valorizes suffering as redemptive, any practice of faith that coddles us into apathy in the face of economic, racial, sexual, political injustice, Jesus is calling that out. And you know what he's telling us to do? He's telling us to call it out. The church has grown silent. I mean, it's like nothing. We don't care. Or the apathy part is this. Well, what can we do? Well, for one, you got a voice. You got a voice.
Nothing bugs me worse than people saying that. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah. I mean, for one thing, you have an awesome weapon called prayer. You know, I was having some trouble emailing Barrow the other day, but, you know, this is a part of my fault, but they experienced something over there the other day that just about wiped them out. And I've got probably 40 pictures he sent me of the earthquake. I mean, buildings crumbled, roads bopped. I mean, gaps in the road that wide that you just can't see. I mean, my gosh. I mean, and you know, there's people in those buildings and people just tore up and no electricity and no nothing. We don't even think nothing about it. You know, heck, what are you going to do? But they're living it, you know. And one thing about those societies are a little bit different than our societies, because a lot of those societies have to work together. Yeah. But, you know, and the one thing I want to say here about this, Jesus notices this widow. He notices the widow. He sees, I mean, if Jesus wasn't in this story right here, would Peter notice this woman? Or John? Where was all the disciples' eyes? All the scribes and the Pharisees and all the big robes they have and the big beautiful prayers they're praying. Or they're over here on the temple. My gosh, look at the pillars in the temple. Look at the gold and the silver. And look at the high priest, Caiaphas, my God. I mean, and in their mind, they're thinking, oh my gosh, and we're going to be sitting on the right hand and one on the left when Jesus comes into his kingdom. And think of the glory and the honor. And man alive, this is going to be awesome. And they don't have time to notice the widow. They don't notice the widow. But Jesus notices the widow. And Jesus notices her gift, her offering. He sees what everybody else is too busy, too grand, too spiritual, too self-absorbed to see. And for me, that's the only redemptive part of the story, that Jesus' eyes are ever on the small, on the insignificant, on the unloved, on the hidden. This is the thing I want to tell people, because we always look and we say, well, those people will just take the money you give them and they won't spend it, or they'll do whatever. And I'm telling you, those are the people Jesus is most readily available to the poor and to the outcast and to the people in society that we call names. That's who Jesus went to and ministered to. I mean, you would think Jesus, was coming into the town, would go to the biggest church, right? Because this is not how he does business. He sure did. He that's first to be last, last to be first. And here's a question I'm going to ask y'all. What exactly does Jesus notice? What does he notice about this woman? I've went through the story here, and you kind of see, he's got to be aggravated because this woman is given to a system that is supposed to be helping her. As a matter of fact, the woman should not even be given to the system. They should have been over there taking money out of that pot given to the poor widows. That's what they should have been doing, wasn't it? But instead, she's given to a system. Imagine this is kind of rough. Now, I'm not for sure what Jesus notices about this woman, but I'm going to make just a few guesses here, okay? He notices the widow's courage. Does she have courage?
She's giving it all, yeah.
I think she had some tremendous courage.
You think she felt helpless?
Well, I'm going to say all of that in there. I'm just looking at this from a few ways because I imagine it takes a bit of courage for her to make her insignificant gift alongside the rich. Right? Imagine I'm behind Joe, and Joe is just dropping money into the pot, and it's ringing and ringing. And I'm probably stinky, and I ain't got no clothes, and I'm just a widow, and I ain't got but 2 cents to drop. I'd say that takes a little courage. I think about the woman at the well that come to meet Jesus. She wasn't coming there when they drew water. Why? Because she didn't want to be around the other women. So I would say this widow here had some courage because she stood right in line with them rich people. That takes some guts. And I would say it took some courage, too, to know that she just dropped her money for her last meal into the pot. And I would say a little bit of courage to swallow back desperation and the entirely human desire to cling to life no matter what and to face her in with hope. I mean, she knows this is it. Nobody's coming to rescue her. And she's facing that. This is it. I'm done. And Jesus, again, I'm kind of guessing here. I think Jesus notices her dignity. Oh, that's the thing, isn't it? See, widowhood had rendered her culturally worthless. All the people that we cast off in our society, for whatever reasons we put labels on. I've thought about this. In our country we got Republicans and Democrats. But do you know the upper, and when I say the upper people, they are about one thing: money. I don't care who they are. They do not care about you no matter what they say. They're about money and power. Now, the Republican Democrats is a ploy to keep you and me fighting against each other, because as long as we fight against each other, we won't turn on them who are devouring all of our houses. And that's the whole system set up in a nutshell. So if you ever think one is for you, you're sadly fooled, because they ain't none of them. Jesus notices her dignity. She's marked expendable even by the temple that she loves. How do I know she loves it? Because she's given her last 2 cents for it. And she has to trust that her tiny gift has value in God's eyes. And in her astonishing generosity, Jesus recognizes a quiet power. Those 2 coins are gestures of defiance. They mark her resistance to dehumanization. In other words, she's not going to become a beggar. She's not going to become any of that stuff. Oh, God, she's a human. God wanted us to give to the Levites. This is all I got. I'm a human being. I'm giving it. Dignity right there. I mean, you understand that. God notices. Because God didn't call any of us to be poor, low-down, dirty, rotten beggars. I mean, there is dignity in bearing the image of God. Now, we bear that with great humility, but not in dignity. The one thing society does today is it wants to take the human dignity away. That's the one thing we have culturally wrong in our society. And finally, Jesus notices her vocation, whether she notices her vocation or not. The widow's action in that temple that day is prophetic, whether she knows it or not. How was she a prophet?
Jesus gave all, he was going to give up his life.
Yeah, more to that too. And here again, what is our definition of a prophet in today's society? I mean, not your definition, but mainstream kind of worldly. Our definition of a prophet, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, is somebody that's going to tell us when the end of time is. Somebody that's going to tell us. Yeah, but I'm suggesting to you that this widow is prophetic, and even prophecy is always pointing towards Jesus, right? How was she pointing towards Jesus? How was she being a prophet? She doesn't say a word. She doesn't say a word. Not one word does she say. So she's a prophet in the sense that her costly offering amounts to a holy denunciation of injustice and corruption. She's right in the face of it. They are supposed to be taking care of her. And they're not. And she's given to them instead. And without saying a word, she speaks God's word in the ancient tradition of Isaiah, Elijah, Jeremiah, on and on and on. You go back and look at them prophets, man, and they all usually died not good deaths. But she's also prophetic in the messianic sense because her self-sacrifice prefigures Jesus. How does her self-sacrifice prefigure Jesus? Not only does she give all that she had, but there's something else that we got to add in here. Something else. She's giving all that she has. She's giving up her life in the face of an unjust system that's exploiting her. So maybe what Jesus notices here, and he calls us, his disciples, to notice, is kinship. Because her story is mirroring his story. Because the widow is giving everything she have to serve a world that is broken, to serve a world that is going to devour her. And just 4 days later, Jesus is giving everything he's got to a world that wants to devour him and destroy him. But in his giving, he's going to bring redemption and renewal and restoration to a same world that said, Caesar's our king. Does that make any sense. Does that give you guys any different mode of viewing this widow woman? Maybe not. Maybe. So now, what's your guys' thoughts on this widow woman? Because I'd always kind of heard it in the sense that you need to give more, and it was about her 2 mites. I never saw this woman, I never put 2 and 2 together that she was giving to a system that was killing her. And how Jesus is telling us, calling us, his disciples, to notice the woman. And how many people in our lives are giving to a system that is killing them and taking from them. But our eyes are on the grandeur of this, and our eyes are on the grandeur of that. And we miss what is going on right in front of our eyes. Mm-hmm. And they took it. And they took it. They devoured. They devoured. Anyway, what's your guys' thoughts on this woman? I'm done. My notes is done, Joe. Any questions, comments?
I just wonder when would we even recognize her as that if, somewhere in the future we're there, would we even recognize these people? But today, in your lesson, I mean, it's like an ongoing thing, and I think, like, all through even the Bible and now, everything, every corruption that is in this world has come from money.
Yeah.
It's money. I don't get it. Every corruption of them stems from money.
And the behind that, I mean, the bottom root of that is fear, but it's power. If I got enough power, then I can be safe. I'm gonna be able to build barns or bunkers, or I'm gonna have safe. And if I have enough power, I'll be safe. And just all of that is, I mean, it stems from fear, but then it just comes out in all of those ways. But yet, and here's this woman.
It's fear, maybe in what I call middle class, lower class, whatever.
Upper class, they all got it.
Upper class, they don't have fear. Come on, would you fear if you were some of these people who already had billions? What are you going to fear? I mean,
Their fear of losing it.
okay, I'll give you a prime example. To me, it's disgusting to me. Nancy Pelosi.
Uh-huh.
Okay. What's she, 85? I mean, how much more she could spend? She's worth.
And she's worth about half of what Mitch McConnell is.
But they can't. Yeah, but they can't.
So you got them on both sides. I mean, and neither one of them can put 2 sentences together.
But they got nothing.
Uh-huh.
Nothing concrete.
I find it.
Ice cream. Okay.
I find it strange that these people own Chinese shipping companies,
Okay.
and they're Speaker of the House.
But when
I don't get it.
Mike, what good is that? What good is any of that? It's not going with them, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
There's nothing. So they're going to be giving up whether they like it or not.
Uh-huh.
They're going to be gone.
Yeah.
But they have nothing concrete to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Because everybody that you see now, and everyone, I would say 90% of our world they have problems with money. I'd say at least 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Everything comes down to that money. That story tells.
Tracy and I were talking coming up here this morning, you know, with their kids getting ready to have babies, and you know, all the way up until the 70s, it was so that the man could work, still buy a home, still buy a car, and raise their kids, and have the mom be at home and raise the kids. And now, you need 3 jobs between 2 people, and you still can't do it. I mean, you know, you just can't, because things have gotten so much out of control. Do you know how much daycare is going to cost for one baby? What is $700 a week? $700 a month? $700 a month just for daycare.
Okay, but is the mother going to make enough to get profit from that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So if you want to buy a house, so I mean, the wages haven't gone up versus, I mean, they will tell you that inflation is 3 or 4%. They're lying like dogs. All of them are lying. Inflation has been between 15 and 20%. And if you're making 3%, that means you're losing 17% a year. So everything is out of hand. I mean, Dad, in 1970 or whatever, bought a whole farm for $17,000, 52 acres. You couldn't, what can you buy now for $17,000? You can't buy a used car for $17,000. He bought a farm.